The terrifying final battle of Blackbeard, true pirate horror story. It is said the sea knows when death is coming. Long before the first cannon thunders, long before the clash of steel, the waters turn restless, as though bracing for the blood they are about to swallow. That was how the morning of November 22nd, 1718 began at Ocracoke Inlet. The tide churned strangely, gulls circled in silence, and the wind carried the acrid smell of smoke, though no fire was near. Sailors swore they saw shapes moving beneath the waves, shadows far too large to be fish. On the deck of his anchored sloop, Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, paced like a caged predator. His ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was gone, grounded months before, but he still carried himself as though a fleet trailed behind him. His beard was braided into thick coils, slow-burning fuses threaded through it, the smoke curling into his hair like the breath of hell itself. To his men, he was larger than life, the embodiment of the sea's fury. To his enemies, he was the devil made flesh. And on that day, his enemies were coming for him. Word had spread through the colonies that Governor Spotswood of Virginia had grown tired of the pirates' reign of terror. He sent 2 ships south, commanded by Lieutenant Robert Maynard, with one mission only: to kill Blackbeard. The order was not to capture, not to negotiate, but to end the man whose name had become a curse whispered in taverns and among trembling merchants. But Blackbeard was no fool. He knew they would come. In the days leading up to the battle, strange signs appeared, omens his crew could not ignore. One man claimed he heard drums beating beneath the waves at night. Another swore that as he gazed into the surf, he saw skulls grinning back at him from beneath the foam. Blackbeard himself was seen staring long into the horizon, his eyes burning, muttering to himself words no one could understand. Some said he had bargained with something older than the sea, promising blood in exchange for power. The night before the fight, the inlet was cloaked in a fog thicker than pitch. Blackbeard stood at the shore, torchlight casting his shadow tall against the rocks. His crew swore he performed a ritual, pouring rum and gunpowder into the surf, whispering for the sea to lend him its strength. Witnesses claimed the water boiled where the mixture fell, though the night was cool. One sailor, too frightened to sleep, swore he heard his captain's laughter carried back on the wind, though Blackbeard's lips never moved. At dawn, as the fog lifted, sails appeared on the horizon. The king's ships were closing in. But before the first shot was fired, every man in the inlet swore they felt it. A pressure, heavy and suffocating, as though the ocean itself was holding its breath. The gulls vanished. The waves stilled. Even the wind seemed to falter. And then Blackbeard smiled. "Let them come," he growled, his voice carrying across the deck. No one doubted what he meant. The battle would not be one of escape. It would be one of blood. Blackbeard was ready to meet death, or worse, to become something beyond it. The omen had passed. The storm was about to break. The inlet at Ocracoke was treacherous, its channels shallow and twisting, perfect for a man who knew the tides as intimately as he knew the edge of his blade. Blackbeard had chosen it well, for any ship chasing him would have to fight the sea as much as his cannons. But Lieutenant Robert Maynard was no stranger to risk, and the governor's orders were clear. Blackbeard had to die. The morning sun rose pale through the mist, turning the water to silver. From the deck of his sloop, Maynard peered ahead at the dark silhouette of the pirate vessel, smaller than the dreaded Queen Anne's Revenge but bristling with menace nonetheless. His heart pounded, but his jaw was set. Blackbeard had terrorized the colonies for too long, burning ships, slaughtering crews, seizing gold and gunpowder with laughter on his lips. Now the hunt was over, but Blackbeard was already waiting. He had stripped his ship down, prepared it for battle, and arranged his men like wolves around a carcass. They crouched low, muskets ready, blades strapped to their belts, their eyes gleaming with the anticipation of slaughter. The pirate king stood tall at the rail, his beard alight with slow-burning fuses, smoke rising around his face until he looked less like a man and more like a phantom conjured from hellfire. The first shot came like a crack of doom. Blackbeard's cannons roared, their thunder echoing across the inlet. Iron shots screamed through the air, smashing into Maynard's lead vessel, splintering wood, and cutting men down where they stood. Blood sprayed across the deck, and still the oarsmen rowed, driving the ship forward into the teeth of the trap. Maynard did not fire back. Not yet. His plan was colder, crueler. He knew Blackbeard expected a volley-for-volley exchange, a bloody dance of cannons until one ship sank. Instead, Maynard ordered silence. His guns stayed still. His men hid low, and through the smoke and roar, his ship pressed on, looking for all the world like a crippled beast limping to its death. The bait was set. Blackbeard's eyes narrowed through the smoke. For a moment, he hesitated, suspicious of the eerie stillness from his prey. Then his grin widened. He believed the battle already won. With a roar, he ordered his crew to board. Grappling hooks flew through the haze, thudding into Maynard's deck. The pirates surged forward like demons unleashed, blades flashing, pistols firing. What they did not know was that Maynard's men crouched below deck. Hidden from sight, muskets loaded, breath held. They waited for the signal. The trap had sprung. The inlet erupted into chaos. Men screamed as steel clashed on steel, muskets cracked, and smoke thickened until it stung the eyes and choked the lungs. Blackbeard fought at the front, a monstrous figure cutting down anyone in his path. His cutlass hacked through flesh and bone with merciless fury, his pistols spitting fire until they were spent. He moved as though untouchable, a storm of smoke and blood. But Maynard had lured him in. He was drawing the pirate into a fight not of ships, but of men. And in the heart of that bloody trap, Blackbeard was about to face his reckoning. The moment the first pirate boots slammed onto Maynard's deck, the trap was unleashed. His hidden crew erupted from the hold like a coiled beast snapping free, muskets blazing in a thunderous volley. The sound shook the very timbers of the sloop. Smoke filled the air, screams rose high, and Blackbeard's men staggered back, cut down before they even had time to raise their blades. But Blackbeard did not falter. He crashed into the fight with the fury of a storm, his cutlass cleaving through musket and bone alike. A pistol barked in his fist, and a man crumpled at his feet. Another swung an axe, but Blackbeard caught it in one massive hand, wrenched it free, and buried it into the sailor's skull with a roar that shook the deck. The air was fire and smoke, blood and splintered wood. The deck groaned under the weight of men locked in mortal combat. Pistols cracked at point-blank range, the flash blinding, the smoke choking. Steel rang against steel, each clash echoing across the inlet like church bells tolling for the dead. Maynard himself charged through the melee, blade flashing, eyes locked on his quarry. He had sworn to kill Blackbeard, and he would not let another man take the honor. Their gazes met through the haze, one cold and resolute, the other burning with the madness of battle. The two men closed in. Blackbeard swung first, his cutlass a blur of iron and fury. Maynard blocked, the shock jarring his arm to the bone. The pirate's strength was monstrous, each blow hammering like a cannonball, each strike threatening to tear the sword from Maynard's grip. Sparks flew as steel bit steel, the sound drowning out the chaos around them. The duel raged across the blood-slicked deck. Maynard ducked under a swing that would have taken his head, lunged forward, and slashed Blackbeard's side. Blood spilled, but the pirate only laughed, the sound guttural, inhuman. He seemed fueled by the wound, his movements growing wilder, faster. Smoke from the burning fuses in his beard curled around his face, making him look like a demon risen from the depths. His eyes gleamed red in the haze, his breath ragged, but still he fought as though death itself had no claim on him. Around them, the battle tilted. Blackbeard's men, caught in the trap, fell one by one beneath Maynard's muskets and blades. The cries of the dying rose high, mingling with the clash of weapons, with the roar of the inlet's waves crashing against the hull. But neither captain saw it. For in that moment, nothing existed but the cut of steel, the smell of blood, and the will to kill. Blackbeard lunged, his cutlass slicing through Maynard's coat, missing flesh by a hair. Maynard thrust back, his blade piercing deep into the pirate's shoulder. Blood sprayed across them both, hot and slick. And still Blackbeard laughed, teeth red, eyes blazing. The deck was littered with the dead, the sea painted crimson, the cannons silenced now, replaced by the savage symphony of men tearing one another apart. And in the center of it all, Edward Teach fought like a man who refused to die. Blood ran in rivers across the deck, soaking the planks, dripping into the hungry sea below. Blackbeard's crew was broken, cut down one by one in Maynard's ruthless ambush. Yet still their captain fought, towering above the chaos, his beard spitting sparks, his wounds pouring crimson, his laughter carrying like a death knell across the inlet. He should have fallen already. By every law of flesh and blood, he should have collapsed beneath the sheer number of wounds carved into him. Muskets had fired point-blank into his chest. Blades had slashed his arms and legs. Pistols had burst smoke against his face. And yet he would not go down. Maynard's men began to falter. Fear set in. Some swore Blackbeard was not a man at all but a demon wrapped in human skin. One sailor, trembling with terror, whispered that each shot only fed him, that the blood running from his veins was the price of some unholy bargain. Still the pirate advanced, roaring, his cutlass swinging with brutal precision, hacking men apart as though their bodies were nothing more than driftwood. Maynard pressed forward, desperation tightening his chest. His sword arm trembled, but he forced it steady. This fight had to end now. He lunged, driving his blade deep into Blackbeard's side. The steel cut through flesh and muscle, sinking to the hilt. Any other man would have dropped. But Blackbeard only leaned close, his foul breath hot against Maynard's face, his eyes burning like coals in the fog. He whispered words no one else heard, words Maynard would never speak of, words that froze the marrow in his bones. Then, with a guttural laugh, Blackbeard wrenched the sword free himself and swung back, his cutlass catching Maynard's arm and sending blood spraying. Still he fought on. Accounts say he took 20 wounds that day, cutlass slashes, pistol shots, musket balls tearing through his body. Yet each time he fell, he rose again, staggering forward with the weight of a nightmare that refused to end. Men stabbed him, shot him, even tried to club him down, and still he came, dragging them into death with him. The inlet had gone silent of birds, silent of waves. Only the clash of steel, the thunder of pistols, and Blackbeard's unholy laughter remained. But every storm breaks. Maynard, bleeding and desperate, called his men to strike together. They surrounded the pirate, hacking, stabbing, firing until smoke blinded them and the smell of blood turned their stomachs. At last, with one final surge, Maynard brought his blade down across Blackbeard's throat. The pirate staggered, blood gushing like the sea itself pouring from a broken hull. His cutlass slipped from his hand. His knees buckled. Still his eyes locked on Maynard's, burning, defiant, as though even death could not claim him. And then, at last, Edward Teach fell. The devil had refused to die. But finally, the sea had claimed him. Or so they thought. The inlet was quiet at last. The screams had died, the clash of steel had faded, and the smoke drifted low across the blood-soaked deck. Blackbeard's body lay crumpled at Maynard's feet, riddled with wounds no mortal man could have withstood. 20 cuts, 5 bullet holes, a slashed throat, and yet it had taken every ounce of fury, steel, and lead to bring him down. But even in death, Edward Teach was not finished. Maynard ordered the body dragged to the rail. The men worked quickly, nervous, as though the corpse might rise again and carve them down where they stood. They bound the head with rough rope and hacked it from his shoulders, the blade crunching through bone with a sickening crack. The severed head was hoisted high, lashed to the bowsprit of Maynard's sloop, a grisly trophy to prove that the terror of the seas was no more. The body was thrown overboard, sinking into the black water with barely a ripple. Yet the sea did not forget. The stories began almost at once. As Maynard's sloop turned north toward Virginia, Men swore they saw a shadow swimming beneath the waves, keeping pace with the ship. Others claimed the water boiled where the corpse had sunk, as though something pulled it down, deeper than any grave. At night, the crew heard heavy footsteps on the deck when no man was near, and the smell of smoke, sharp, acrid burning, drifted across the ship though no torch was lit. Some said the severed head's eyes still glowed faintly in the dark, as though the fire within the man had not gone out. And when they reached the shore, when Maynard mounted the head on a pike to display in Bath Town, the curse spread further. Farmers whispered that storms rose suddenly from calm skies, thunder rolling like cannon fire, lightning clawing the earth. Fishermen claimed nets came up torn and empty, the sea withholding its gifts in anger. Sailors passing Ocracoke swore they saw a figure walking the shore at night, a giant with embers burning in his beard, staring endlessly out to sea. But the most chilling tales came from those who sailed near the inlet itself. On moonless nights, they said the water glowed faintly red. The sound of drums rolled across the waves, deep and hollow, like the heartbeat of something immense. And sometimes, if the fog was thick, a voice carried with it low, ragged, furious. A voice that promised vengeance. A voice that laughed, even in death. Blackbeard's reign had ended in blood and fire, but his legend only grew stronger. Mothers whispered his name to silence their children. Sailors carved charms of iron and bone to keep his spirit at bay. And some swore he was not gone at all, that the sea itself had taken him, body and soul, binding him to its depths until the day it chose to release him again. To this day, off the coast of North Carolina, when the fog rolls in thick and the tide surges black, locals claim you can hear it. The sound of footsteps on wet planks, the crackle of embers in the wind, and a laugh that chills the blood. For Edward Teach, the man they called Blackbeard, may have lost his final battle, but his curse sails on, and the sea never forgets.